Good afternoon. How's everything going? And everybody having a good week? Anil, are you having a good week?
Yes, Professor. How are you?
I'm good. Let me see if I can turn up my speaker. All right. So let's try that again. So how was your week, Anil?
Pretty good, thank you.
Now I can hear you. Yeah, it's always when I'm listening to music or something, and then I have to turn it down because it's late at night, and neighbors don't want to hear, your computer while they're trying to sleep. So then I remember to turn it back up when I'm doing my Zoom thing. So Candace, how are you doing?
I'm doing well.
How do you
I had
like
a
it?
great,
Go ahead.
I was gonna say I had a great weekend and it was fun.
How do you like this class so far?
I actually really enjoy it.
You having fun?
I am having fun and I'm learning quite a bit that, I thought I had a good background with English and everything, but I am actually learning quite a bit from this class already. So I really, really enjoy it.
Okay, well, today we're going to focus on sentence structure so that we can knock out our sentence fragments. How's that for a good teaching objective? What do you think? And so
Sounds great.
so today's lecture, we're going to focus on preparing for the week 7 quiz. So without further ado, while we're still not yet Zoom fatigued, hey Jamila, how are you doing? Okay, so I'm about to start, and I'm going to start the week 6 instructor session, which is about the week 7 quiz. And so in this today's lesson, we're going to go over the week 7 quiz, and then I'm going to introduce you to the comparison contrast essay. And also your week 7, next week's interactive lecture, will also be talking about what is a comparison contrast essay, which is your essay 2. That's your second essay after this one. So let's start our week 7 quiz. So sentence structure fun exercise. We'll get to that in a second. So sentences can be joined together by either a coordinating conjunction, a subordinating conjunction, or a transition word. All sentences can be joined together by different kinds of conjunctions. If the conjunction is a subordinating conjunction, then the sentence becomes a dependent clause, and you need another sentence to complete the thought. These are known as complex sentences. If the sentences are joined by coordinating conjunctions, then you have a compound sentence. You need to learn the difference between these conjunctions to avoid sentence fragments. In student essays, I am always commenting on students to say, learn sentence structure to avoid sentence fragments. I've said this like hundreds of times. So today, you will learn a sentence structure to avoid sentence fragments. So first you need to recognize the 3 basic sentence structures in English. So first let me see how well you know your sentences. John was fat. Is that a simple, compound, or complex sentence? Anil.
I think that would be a simple sentence.
Good. John was fat, but Mary was thin. Candace, what kind of sentence is that? A simple, compound, or complex sentence?
Complex.
Compound. It's a compound. Compound.
Yeah, compound. I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay. Although John was fat, Mary was thin. So, Jamila, what kind of sentence is that?
That one would be complex.
Okay, so you got it by process of elimination. So
Yes,
here, so anything that has fanboys, for and but, or, nor, yet, so, that's fanboys. That's a compound sentence. When you have a compound sentence, you have 2 sentences of equal importance. So if you're the writer and you want to give equal weight to the 2 sentences in your essay, you would use a compound sentence. If you want to give your first sentence less weight but more weight on the second sentence, then you would write in a complex sentence. So the difference between a compound and complex sentence is in its coordinating conjunction versus subordinating conjunction, because whenever you start a sentence with a subordinating conjunction like although, it makes the sentence John was fat, turns it into a dependent clause, and then suddenly it becomes a sentence fragment. So if I say John was fat, it's a complete sentence. But if I add in although John was fat, and you don't have Mary was thin, you just say, although John was fat, period, that is a sentence fragment. If I say, which is good, period, that's also a sentence fragment. And so I had a student make a lot of those kind of mistakes in her essay. Mary was thin, even though John was fat. See, all of these have almost the same meaning. John was fat, but Mary was thin. John was fat, yet Mary was thin. Although John was fat, Mary was thin. Mary was thin, even though John was fat. Or, that sort of thing. But the only difference in the meaning is that some of the sentences are compound sentences with equal significance between the two sentences, and some of the sentences are complex sentences where you have one sentence less important than the other. Then the third kind of way in which you can combine your sentences together are known as conjunctive adverbs. Conjunctive adverbs are transition words. So instead of saying even though or but, so instead of using but all the time, you would use transition words of opposition. So you would say John was fat, nevertheless, Mary was thin. So instead of using but, you would use nevertheless, however. And then Anil actually put a really good transition word list into the forums. And I think I put a transition word graphic into your announcements. And so if you want different ways of saying but, you would use transition words of opposition. I'm going to cover in depth transition words in my week 8 instructor session. But here I just mentioned that this is another way in which you can connect two sentences together. Coordinating conjunctions, subordinating conjunctions, and conjunctive adverbs are 3 ways in which you can connect sentences together. So I mentioned it here. So the first sentence is simple sentence, which is subject, verb, object. A sentence is a complete thought, also known as an independent clause. So here you have Jack is the subject, gets is the verb, good is the adjective, grades is the object. So subject, verb, adjective, object, or subject, verb, object, that's a simple sentence. Oh, and then here you have Jack is tall. So here's the only time you have the adjective come after the noun is when you have subject, an is verb, a be verb, and then adjective. All of these are simple sentences. So here you have Steve loses rarely at the casinos. At the casinos is a prepositional phrase. You can also say at the casinos, Steve loses rarely. So I could actually turn this sentence around. Let's see. And still, at the casinos, Steve rarely loses. Okay, and so that is still a simple sentence. Okay, and so here, Robert eats steak. So this you have subject, verb, direct object. And then you can have a prepositional phrase, verb, and subject. So you can't have the subject after the verb when you have it in this particular up the hill sits an old house, which is the same thing as the old house sits up the hill. And so here you have prepositional phrase, because the prepositional phrase shows time and place. And then here you have your verb, and here you have your subject. Down the street is the police station, which is the same thing as the police station is down the street. And so when you have this kind of construction, down the street is the police station, down the street is what part of speech?
Positional phrase.
And what is? What part of speech? Anybody?
Is.
I'm signaling it. It's a verb.
That would be the verb?
Yeah, it's a stative verb. It's not an active verb, but I'm not going to go into the difference. But stative verb states something that's like the condition of something, that sort of thing. Or the location of something. It's not an action verb. But anyway, yeah, but it's still a verb. And then here you have the police station. What part of speech is the police station?
That would be the subject.
Very good. And then you have the regular subject, verb, object here, and preposition. Subject, verb, prepositional phrase. Here you have prepositional phrase, verb, and subject. Means the same thing. So all of these are simple sentences. Everybody get simple sentences? Yeah. So the second kind of sentence are compound sentences, where you have two sentences joined together with fanboys, for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. So if you have fanboys, you have to have a comma. So if you have two sentences joined by fanboys, for, and, nor, but, or, so, yet, John ate steak, comma, but Mary ate salad. John slept in a bed. What's missing in this sentence? I just said what the punctuation was. It's
A
correct.
comma right before but.
Exactly. I don't know why that's that mistake, but anyway, John gets good grades, for he studies hard. John is tall, but Mary is short. Steve gambles all the time, yet he rarely loses. Mary likes to dress up so she can feel good about herself. Robert eats steak, and he likes to dance. Usually Mr. Smith goes to the park, or he goes to the beach to take his walks. So in all of the fanboys, you have to put a comma before the fanboys in order to avoid a comma splice. And so here are your transition words of emphasis, addition, contrast, and order. And so here I did a lot of transition words of order. I'm going to go over all of this in my week 8 Zoom lesson. But these are the transition words of order that I had everybody put into their body paragraphs. How many people did that for their essays? Did you do that for your? Yes. So and then you have different ways of saying but, and then that's all of these transition words of contrast. Different ways of saying and. So you don't say and. So that's transition words of addition. And then transition words of emphasis would be different ways of saying, for example, and also different ways of saying and. Okay, so these are only some transition words. This is not a complete list. I believe that there are 200 transition words in the English language, so you can Google that. All right, so the third kind, and these are also known as conjunctive adverbs, and so I will go over conjunctive adverbs in the next lesson. So the third kind of sentence is a complex sentence. A complex sentence has a dependent clause and an independent clause together as one sentence. So that is another way in which you can combine two sentences together. You make one of the sentences a dependent clause, and then you complete that thought with an independent clause. And so a dependent clause, other ways of saying dependent clause is adjective clause, noun clause, subordinate clauses, sentence fragments, incomplete thoughts, incomplete sentences, and adverb clauses. These are all the different kinds of dependent clauses. Then you have different kinds of adjective clauses, like adjective clauses of time, adjective clauses of condition, adjective clauses of, same thing with this one and this one. I'm not going to go into it. We'll get into it later. So here I give you some adverbial clauses of opposition. That would be like even though, although. Adverbial clauses of time is like after I go to bed, I snore, or something like that. So that's an adverbial clause of time. There's actually 2 more, but anyway, all I want you to know is that these are all subordinating conjunctions. And whenever you have a subordinating conjunction, that's how you render your independent clause a dependent clause. And that's how you turn an independent clause into a sentence fragment. So we never leave this alone. We never say after he goes to bed, and then we put a period. Okay, and we never start a sentence with after he goes to bed unless you have another sentence to complete it. And so these are all and another way to remember your subordinating conjunctions, just like we do fanboys, to remember for, and, nor, but, or, so, yet. So to remember your subordinating conjunctions, you could remember awubness, awubis. So here it should have 3 A's here, actually. Yeah. So you would have awubis. And so awubis stands for after, although, as, when, while, because, before, if, and also since. And then here I is if. And so a after, as, a while, okay, when, while, until, because, before, if, and since. So you just remember it as awubis. So awubis are adverbial clauses that start sentences and cannot stand by themselves, as they are dependent clauses and they need another sentence to complete them. Awubis sentences cause sentences to become subordinate and cause sentences to become sentence fragments. So these are all awubis, they are all adverb clauses, which is the same thing as a dependent clause. And they're a handy way in which you can expand your sentence. Instead of saying, John went on the airplane, you could say, before John went on the flight and went on the airplane, he put away his water bottle into his bag, or something like that. So awubis is a great way to expand your sentence or combine two sentences together. Awubis is also used to name a lot of songs and name a lot of movies, like As the World Turns, When a Man Loves a Woman. So you could tell that all of this awubis, these are all sentence fragments. So if you can remember that awubis is used a lot as fragments, then you'll remember not to use awubis alone. Okay, the awubis does not name all subordinating conjunctions. There are actually a lot more than awubis, but it's still a great way to remember your complex sentences. So you remember the main ones. So Anil, without looking at the paper, what does awubis stand for?
I looked again. After, although, as, the I is for if, the S is for since, U is until, when and where, because and before.
Very good. Yeah, so it's pretty easy to remember awubis. Those are the major ones. And so here you have, although you got as soon as long as, there's a lot more than that, but you can add awubois, you can put an O in there because that would mean once. Okay, so if you're French, that's easy to remember. Anyway, so if the subordinate clause is at the beginning of the sentence, you have to put a comma after that dependent clause. After John eats dinner, comma, he goes to bed. Although Jack is fat, comma, he eats very little. As soon as the alarm clock rings, comma, Steve jumps out of bed. As long as I study hard, comma, I can get good grades. Because Michael Jordan is tall, he plays great basketball. Before I go to bed, comma, I brush my teeth. Once I get my driver's license, comma, I will buy my own car. Rather than spend a lot of money on clothes, I like to make my own clothes. Since I lost my husband, comma, I have to get a job. Unless you do your job perfectly, you will be fired. When I was younger, comma, I used to have a lot more energy. So we went over this particular rule, I believe, in the week 5 quiz. So this is very easy for you. And if the subordinating conjunction comes after at the end of the sentence, you don't need a comma. So John goes to bed after he eats dinner. He eats very little, although he is fat. Steve jumps out of bed as soon as the alarm rings. And Michael Jordan plays great basketball because he is tall. And so when you have all these sentences are complex sentences because you have a dependent clause after John eats dinner, and then you have a independent clause, he goes to bed. When you put the two together, that's known as a complex sentence. And then obviously, like we went over last time, the exception to the rule is when you have who, whom, whose, which, that. So if you have who, whom, whose, which, that, then if the dependent clause comes after, at the end of the sentence, you need one comma. And if who, whom, whose, which, that is at the beginning of the sentence, you need 2 commas. Okay? So that is, there's another way of knowing this is adjective clause, and also it's John, who is French. So here you have a comma before John and after French. So here you have an appositive because this adjective clause, who is French, describes John. So when you have an adjective clause at the beginning of a sentence, you need 2 commas. And when the adjective clause is at the end of the sentence, you only need 1 comma. Is everybody clear on that? Yeah. when we have a conjunctive adverb, I don't think I did this one. When you have a conjunctive adverb like transition words, John likes to walk outside, then you have a semicolon and then a comma. You always have to have a comma after a transition word. However, you can also do it this way. You can also go like this and put in a big T. That's another way of punctuating a transition word. You got two ways of doing it, but you always have to have a comma after a transition word. And another way of saying transition word is conjunctive adverb, in case you want to Google that. And so here, all right, so in a nutshell, you have three kinds of sentences in English. John drinks water is a simple sentence. Then you have John drinks a lot of water, but he is still thirsty. That's a compound sentence because you have fanboys in the middle. And then, although John drinks a lot of water, he is still thirsty. That's a woobus. And whenever you have a woobus, you have a complex sentence. And then you have to have, and when the dependent clause in a woobus is at the beginning of the sentence, you put a comma. And when a woobus sentence is at the end of the sentence, you don't need a comma. However, if you have adjective clauses like www, four W's and a that's one way of remembering it, then you have a different set of rules. Does that help you remember? Four W's and four WT, and then you have to have two commas at the beginning of the sentence if it's at the beginning of the sentence, and one comma if it's at the end of the sentence, 4WT. So here are some stuff from your quiz. So if you aren't going to be able to make it, please call. So if you aren't going to be able to make it is a complex sentence because it has if you aren't going to make it is a dependent clause, and please call is a declarative sentence, and it is a complete sentence. So declarative sentences are complete sentences. And so here you have a complete correct sentence. It takes skill to call in sick to work with a phony excuse. This is also a simple sentence. And so it is a, believe it or not, that is a subject. It's called a vague subject. It takes is the verb. Skill is the direct object. To call in sick to work is known as an infinitive phrase, and with a phony excuse is a prepositional phrase. So that is a simple sentence. Does everybody get that? Yeah. And then here, this is also a correct sentence. It's also on your quiz. First of all, one must be sure to speak directly to the boss. So this, one is the subject, must be sure, no, not just must is the helping verb, be is the verb, be sure is it's an infinitive. Anyway, to speak directly to the boss. And so here, directly to the boss, directly is what part of speech is directly? We went over this in the first two quizzes. Any word that ends in ly is what part of speech?
Oh,
Adverb.
adverb.
Adverb, yes. So it talks about how you speak directly to the boss. What part of speech is to the boss? Something that shows time and place.
Oh, preposition.
Prepositional phrase, yes. Today I will be making appointments on the phone. And so here today is an adverb clause of time. I is the subject. Will be making appointments. That whole thing is a verb. On the phone is a what part of speech? We just said it a second ago.
It's a preposition.
Prepositional phrase, yes, because it shows time and place. So here you have subject, verb, and prepositional phrase. Today I will be making appointments on the phone. So that's a correct sentence. This is when I was 4, my father taught me how to ride a bike. So when I was 4 is a subordinating conjunction, and then not subordinate, dependent clause, and my father taught me how to ride a bike is an independent clause. So when you have an independent and a dependent clause, that's a correct sentence. That's a complex sentence. At the age of 4, my father taught me to ride a bike. We're going to learn, why is this sentence incorrect?
Is it because of the 4?
Yeah, what about it?
Well, it has to be spelled out because it's only one digit.
Okay, that's one mistake, but that's I will write that in. Okay, at the age of 4. F-U-R. It's still wrong, but
Oh, it's still wrong. Okay.
That wasn't the mistake I was looking for, but that's good because now I'll just correct that for the next class. So at the age of 4, my father taught me to ride a bike. What other mistake is in that sentence? So your father was 4 years old when he taught you to ride a bike?
Oh.
Yeah, so we're going to be learning about dangling and misplaced modifiers.
So there should be a comma after the father.
No, there should be another subject. It should be at the age of 4. I learned to ride a bike. Who's at the age of 4? It's not your father that's at the age of 4. You're at the age of 4. So therefore, it should be my father taught me to ride a bike or something like that at the age of 4. So here we're going to learn how to do that later. So fanboys, I could tell the room had been dusted, for all the pictures were crooked. So this is a complete correct sentence because then in fanboys, a compound sentence has an independent clause. Then you have the comma, and then you have the fanboys coordinating conjunction, and then you have the independent clause. Okay, and so here you have also a compound sentence and a compound sentence. So I'm going to go over modifiers. What are modifiers? Modifiers describes the subject object of the sentence. Modifiers are words that provides details and description about the object. The object is usually the noun. Okay, so modifiers, so is it true or false? It's going to be your quiz question. So true or false? Modifiers are words that provide details and descriptions, like an adjective. So modifiers are like adjectives. They provide details and descriptions. Blue modifies the word shirt. So therefore blue is a modifier for shirt because what is the color? So that's what a modifier is. A dangling modifier occurs when a modifier does not logically refer to other words in the sentence. So visiting the zoo, the birds chirped loudly. Who's visiting the zoo? Are the birds visiting the zoo? No, you're visiting the zoo. So it should be when I was visiting the zoo, the birds chirped loudly. So when you have a dangling modifier, it means that you're missing a subject to your sentence. You have a modifier but nothing to modify. So that's similar to say, if I were to go like this, John has a blue. John has a blue what? Right? So you're missing whatever it is you're modifying is not there. So that's what a dangling modifier is. That's the subject or whatever you're modifying is missing. So walking on the sidewalk, a car raced by. So does your car walk on the sidewalk? No. So your car does not walk on the sidewalk. So it would be, while I was walking on the sidewalk, a car raced by. Okay, so that's how you would write it correctly. While working, an earthquake shook the building. So here you have a dangling modifier because an earthquake cannot hold a job. So while I was working in the building, the earthquake shook the building. So then on your quiz, it's going to say, what kind of error is in this sentence? This is a sentence that has a dangling modifier error because it's missing a subject. Having finished the assignment, the TV was turned on. So did the TV turn itself on and off? Although in the future, that might be the case. Okay, when they start having smart TVs that you walk in the room and the sensor comes on and your TV will come on. But that's in the future. They actually have something like that. But for now, a person has to turn on the TV. So after I finish my assignment, I turn the TV on. That would be the complete correct sentence. So who turned on the TV? Having arrived late, a written excuse was needed. So who arrived late? The written excuse? No. Having arrived late, I gave a written excuse to my boss or to my teacher. So here in all of these sentences, you're missing the subject. And so when you're missing the subject, that's how you have a dangling modifier. And so here you have, introducing ing for some reason. I forget why I was doing that. Having arrived late. Oh, it's a gerund. When you have these ings, these are while I was walking. It's a reduced adjective clause. It's supposed to be while I was walking on the sidewalk, a car raced by. So sometimes you cannot use a reduced adjective clause because then it results in a dangling modifier. All right, so all the sentences above are all examples of dangling modifiers because they are missing a subject. Study the colored sentences carefully, for they are all on the quiz as examples of dangling modifiers. A misplaced modifier occurs when a modifier is placed incorrectly in the sentence. So if I were to say, so all the sentences below here are all examples of misplaced modifiers. So if I were to say the patient was referred to a therapist with severe problems, who's the person with severe problems? Is the therapist having severe problems, or is the patient having severe problems? So that way, that means that this sentence isn't correct. You're not going to go to a therapist that already has problems, are you? So basically, it's supposed to be the patient with severe problems was referred to a therapist. So if you have to move your modifier around in order to have a correct sentence, then that's known as a misplaced modifier error. Okay? So here you have the new employee will take the front office wearing the brown suit. So is your front office wearing a brown suit? No. You have to change, you have to put the wearing the brown suit, you have to say the new employee wearing the brown suit will take the front office. So if you have to change, if you have to move the modifier around, that's known as a misplaced modifier. My uncle just watches one television station. Well, here it's supposed to be my uncle watches just one television station. So if I've got to move the modifier around, this is a misplaced modifier. I will be on the phone making appointments today. So is your phone making appointments? No. So here, making appointments has to be changed to I will be making appointments on the phone. That's how you would fix the sentence. So if I have to move the modifier in order to fix the sentence, that is a misplaced modifier. Okay, I'll say it again. If I have to move the modifier to make the sentence correct, that's a misplaced modifier. On her way home, Jan found a gold man's watch. So how would we fix this sentence? Is the man made of gold, or is the watch made of gold? So it's the watch that's made of gold. So on her way home, Jan found a man's gold watch. That's the correct sentence. So I have to move the word gold, okay? And I've got to place it over here in between man's gold watch. And so how do we fix this sentence? On her way home, Jan found a man's gold watch. So here I had to move the modifier in order to have a correct sentence. So that is a misplaced modifier. The torn student's book lay on the desk. Well, the student isn't all torn. It's the book that's torn. So you would write the student's torn book lay on the desk. So that is also an example of a misplaced modifier. So you have to put the word torn over here next to before the word book. And so the key to correcting misplaced modifiers is make sure the doer of the action is named, and make sure the modifier is placed near the word it modifies. So here the word torn is not placed near the word it modifies. So it needs to be placed near book because torn talks about books. So this is all I'm going to do on dangling modifiers and misplaced modifier. So in review, what is a dangling modifier? Just went over this. What is a dangling modifier? A dangling modifier is when the subject is missing. So while walking on the sidewalk or while working, the earthquake shook the building. It's supposed to be while I was working, the earthquake shook the building. So when you have a dangling modifier, you're missing a subject. So what is a misplaced modifier?
Where the modifier has to be moved close to the subject.
Yes. So when you have a dangling modifier, it means you're missing a subject. And when you have a misplaced modifier, that means that you have to move the modifier to the right place in order to have a correct sentence. Does everybody have that so far? Do I need to go over it again? No. Okay, the next part of this is sentence fragments. Sentence fragments are missing parts of the sentence, like a subject or a verb or a complete thought. A sentence fragment is an incomplete thought. A sentence fragment does not express a complete thought. A dependent clause not attached to an independent clause is a sentence fragment. More examples of sentence fragments are broke the glass. So here you're missing the subject. Who broke the glass? So correct would be the dog broke the glass. Sentence fragment, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. What about them? So then the predicate, that is the verb and the object, is missing. Mr. and Mrs. Smith are old people. Okay, now you have a complete sentence. So here are some examples of not a coworker or secretary. That's a fragment because there's no subject and there's no verb. And not sound like a faker. Who are we talking about? So that's also a fragment. When he is fat. When who is fat? About what? Also not a complete thought. So it's a sentence fragment. Although she sings. And that's part of the awubis. See, now you know awubis. Anything under awubis, this would go under when, is automatically a dependent clause and a sentence fragment if you don't put another sentence. If a person talks to a coworker who doesn't like him or her, that's also part of awubis. That's the I in awubis. And if, that means that it's a sentence fragment because awubis are all subordinating conjunctions. And so that's not a complete thought. Okay, so if a person, that's also on your quiz. So does everyone understand sentence fragments so far? So Jamila, what is a sentence fragment? Is it a complete sentence? Is
No, ma'am. My grandmother had hit the thing. I'm sorry. No, ma'am. It's not.
Okay, it is not a complete sentence. Okay, so what is a run-on sentence? A run-on sentence is two or more sentences written as one. A run-on sentence can contain more than one thought as long as it is punctuated correctly. A run-on sentence occurs when ideas are joined together incorrectly, usually with, in other words, when you have two sentences together with no period, that's a run-on sentence. So if I say something, and a comma splice is when you put in a comma where a period should be. Okay, so comma splice is when you use a comma instead of a period at the end of a sentence. A comma splice occurs when two independent clauses are joined with a comma instead of a fan voice. Okay, so here, if I just say John ate dinner, he went to the restaurant. This is a comma splice because this is incorrect. And so here you need to put in either comma and put in and. Now you make it correct because now it is a compound sentence because you have independent clause, comma, a coordinating conjunction, and then another two sentences joined by fan voice is a compound sentence. But if I take out and, then it's not correct. It becomes a comma splice. Another way to fix it is I simply put in a comma, I simply put it in a period and I capitalize it. That's correct because now you have two simple sentences, all right? So either two simple sentences, and that's correct, but you cannot have, I think I had it like this. Dinner, this, he. So you cannot have a comma splice. So correct is this or this. Or you can make it into a complex sentence and say, John, who ate dinner, went to the restaurant. And so here you can have, and you can also, depending on your sentence, you can actually have John, who ate dinner, went to the restaurant. Remember, when we have three W's with a T, then when it's at the beginning of a sentence, you have to have two commas. A fused sentence is when you have two sentences with no period after the first sentence. So a comma splice is when you use a comma unnecessarily. And a fused sentence is simply a sentence with no comma. So if I say John ate dinner, he went to the restaurant. So where's the comma? So that's a fused sentence. Then you could correct it by the same way you would correct it here. John ate dinner, or John ate dinner and you put a comma and. Or you put a period and correct, okay? So basically a fused sentence means you simply forgot your period, and a comma splice means you use an unnecessary comma. And both of them are all sentence fragments, okay? So when you have a run-on sentence, it's also a sentence fragment. So here are some comma splice examples from your quiz. The can of mushroom soup must have spoiled. It was bulging at the top. So here you would want to put in, how would we fix this sentence? 2 ways. So right now it's incorrect. How would we fix it?
Well, you can capitalize the it, or we can add the can of mushrooms must have spoiled. I'm going to add an and as well.
Right. So either you can add an, oops. Oh wow, I wonder how I did that. Either you can add an and or yet to it, yet it was bulging at the top. Either way, or you can put a period and put a capital I. But either way, this is incorrect. It is a comma splice. Okay? So here, I respect my parents. I resent their attempts to choose a career for me. So this is a comma splice because here you should have a period. And so you can have and here also. And if you're going to put in a transition word, then you could put a semicolon. In addition, I resent their attempts to choose a career for me. So instead of saying and all the time, we would use a transition word of addition. Anything from the transition word, furthermore, moreover, therefore, okay? Any of those transition words work just fine. So anyway, so on your quiz, it's going to be a comma splice. Fused sentence. The most popular language in the world is Chinese. More than 1 billion people speak it. So here you have a fused sentence because here you need a comma. Here you need a comma, not a comma. You need a period and you need a big M. John knew the answer to the last essay exam. He didn't have enough time to write his response. So here you have a sentence fragment because here is missing a period. So this is a fused sentence. That means 2 sentences that are accidentally fused together. That's what a fused sentence is. So that's still a sentence fragment. Is everybody clear on a comma splice and a fused sentence?
Yes, ma'am.
One question, sorry, on the fused sentence part. So, for example, the sentence that we're looking at, George knew the answer to the last essay exam question. Does that have to have a period in there, or can you put something else too?
Oh, you can do like this is a lot of ways to fix this one. As a result, he didn't have enough time to write his. So you can use a transition word of consequence. You just have to. Or okay, with transition words, you can either do it like this.
Can it be therefore too? Oh,
Yep. Yeah. Any of those transition words. Okay, you just have to remember this. Therefore, he didn't have enough time. For, and then if you want to put it as a compound sentence, for means because. For he didn't have enough time. So if you don't want to say because all the time, you use for. It's very formal English. Nobody speaks that way anymore, by the way. It's very British English to say, George knew the answer to the last essay question, for he didn't have enough time to write his response. So if you hear a British person speak, they use a lot of fors. Americans don't tend to use for, by the way. But it's good to know what it means so that it would become a compound sentence. So on your quiz, on your quiz, it's going to be a fused sentence because it's missing a period. Any other questions? Now I'm going on to something else, okay? Possessive subject. So when we use an apostrophe S, we either use an apostrophe S to show possession or to show contractions. And we don't use apostrophe S's for things like the coats were hung in the closet. That's wrong. You don't know how many times I've seen this mistake in quizzes. So, it's a nice day is also incorrect. Oh, it auto corrected it for me. How nice of it. It's a nice day is also incorrect. So when we use apostrophe S, we want to use apostrophe S to show possession. So if I want to say Brian's hat fell off his head. Okay, so apostrophe S can use for possession, and it can also be used for contractions. Okay, so apostrophe S to show contractions. So it's a nice day for a walk. He's a handsome man. Things like that. Okay, that's when we use apostrophe S. And so when we have a possessive subject, that means that you have the China doll's dress was a sunny yellow. Brian's hat. So this is known as a possessive subject because you have the apostrophe S. And it's going to ask on your quiz what part of speech is where is the possessive subject in this sentence. So you know it's China doll's dress or Brian's hat. And then here, which sentence demonstrates a possessive object? I live in Darren's house. So here you have the object of a preposition. So objects usually come after the verb. Okay, so I live, do you believe that cooking is woman's work or something like that? So that's a possessive object. Those are the last two things I'm going to go over before we try out the practice quiz. Do you have any questions on today's lesson? No. Okay, so let's try out our practice quiz. The new employee will take the front office wearing the brown suit. What kind of error is in this sentence? Dangling modifier or misplaced modifier? Error.
Misplaced modifier.
Misplaced modifier. You get that, Jamila? Is that good?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, next one, number 2. Jamila, which is the correct sentence?
The correct sentence is C.
C, yes, because here these two sentences are missing the apostrophe. And because I have my program set on correction for grammar, that's why you got that line underneath it. It's a dead giveaway. And not sound like a faker. Is that a complete sentence or a fragment?
That's a fragment.
That's a fragment. Which sentence below is correct? At the age of 4, my father taught me to ride a bike. When I was 4, my father taught me to ride a bike.
B.
B, yes, because at the age of 4 is a dangling modifier, okay? It's missing a subject. The most popular language in the world is Chinese. More than 1 billion people speak it. Is this a complete sentence or a run-on sentence?
Run-on.
Run-on sentence. Which sentence is correct? Linda took her daughter to the doctor who has a high fever. Linda took her daughter who has a high fever to the doctor.
So the B, of course.
B, of course. One would not take one's daughter to a doctor with a high fever. My uncle watches just one television station. Or my uncle watches just one television station. What kind of error is in this sentence? Dangling modifier or misplaced modifier? How would we correct the sentence? That's how you can tell which is which.
Yeah.
If you have to replace a subject, or if a subject is missing, that's a dangling modifier. If you've got to move the modifier around, that's a misplaced modifier.
I am unsure about this one.
Okay, so here you would say, my uncle watches just one television station. So that, therefore, it is a misplaced modifier because I have to move around just in order to fix the sentence. So that's a misplaced modifier. George knew the answer to the last essay question. He didn't have enough time to write his response. Is that a complete sentence or a run-on sentence?
So that'd be a run-on.
That's a run-on sentence. Walking on the sidewalk.
I'm sorry, Professor H, excuse me. I missed number 9, and I do apologize about that. Will you repeat the reason why that was the answer? I'm sorry.
Okay, George knew the answer to the last essay exam. He didn't have enough time.
I'm sorry, number 9, the walking on the sidewalk.
We haven't done that yet.
Oh, well, that's why I didn't get it then. Okay.
Yeah, we were just about to do that. So Anil, did I do number 9 yet?
No, you haven't. We're still on 8.
We're still on 8. So does everyone get 8?
Okay. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Mhm.
Walking on the sidewalk, a car raced by. What kind of error is in this sentence? Is it a dangling modifier or a misplaced modifier?
That will be a misplaced modifier.
It's a dangling modifier because here you're missing a subject. Therefore, you're left dangling, which is why it's called a dangling modifier, meaning it's so here walking while I was walking on the sidewalk, a car raced by. So
Okay.
walking, because remember that the modifier has to be placed near whatever the subject is. So if I have walking on the sidewalk, it's supposed to modify car.
The subject.
Then it doesn't, but that's not correct. So walking on the side, while I was walking on the sidewalk, a car raced by. So that is a dangling modifier. First of all, one must be sure to speak directly to the. Oh, did you need to go over that again?
No, ma'am. I was saying thank you.
Oh, okay. First of all, one must be sure to speak directly to the boss. Is this a complete sentence or a fragment?
I think that's a complete sentence.
That's a complete sentence. Excellent. Because you have subject, must be sure to speak is a verb, and directly to the boss is object. Subject, verb, object. It's a simple sentence. While an earthquake shook the building. What kind of sentence is this? Is this,
I
while
think
I
it's
was-
dangling.
oh, this should be while I was working? No, while working, yes. I believe it's missing a word. While working, and yes, that's it. While working, an earthquake shook the building. Is that a dangling modifier, a misplaced modifier, or no error?
So that once again would be the
Dangling.
dangling, yeah, because it's
Yeah.
missing the I was
Yeah.
working.
Another
Yeah,
way
I
of
was
remem-
thinking it too.
another cheap way of remembering is ing. Every time you see ing, it tends to be dangling modifier. I know that's not the good way to remember it, but
No, it's a
Anyway.
great way to remember it.
it's a great mnemonic.
Right. It is.
If a person talks to a coworker who doesn't like him or her, is that a complete sentence or a fragment?
That's a fragment.
A wubis. Yeah, a wubis is always a fragment.
Hmm.
Not to a coworker or secretary. Is that a complete sentence or fragment?
Same thing.
Fragment.
Fragment. Hmm.
The can of mushroom soup must have spoiled. It was bulging at the top. Complete or run on?
So run on.
Run on.
Yeah.
Okay. Modifiers are A, B, or C. Offers details, should be placed far away from the object, should be deleted from the sentence.
It's A, so it should offer a detail. In
Yeah, it's just like an adjective.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. Hmm.
George knew the answer, and we just did this one already. I don't know why that's there. Okay. Does the following sentence contain a misplaced modifier or a dangling modifier? I will be on the phone making appointments today.
Dangling because of the ing.
No, it's actually
In this one, no.
misplaced.
This
Oh.
is, this is the only one that doesn't follow that one. Sorry about that. So I will be making appointments on the phone today. So this is because you got to change this one. You have to move it around.
Yeah,
So
this
that's
would.
the only one that doesn't work with the ing. With the ing, it means that when the ing is at the beginning of the sentence. Okay. Ing at the
Okay,
beginning of
yes, ma'am.
I respect my parents. I resent their attempts to choose a career for me. A, is that a complete sentence, or B, is that a run-on?
Complete.
It's a run-on because here you have a comma splice. So you're supposed to go like this, and then it's correct. Okay, I respect my parents. That's a simple sentence. Then another simple sentence would be, I resent their attempts to choose a career for me. Then that would be 2 complete sentences. But if you
Yes,
have
ma'am.
it like that, it's known as a fused sentence. And 2 kinds of run-on sentences are comma splices and fused sentences. Those are 2 kinds of run-on sentences. That is 2 sentences that run together by mistake because the student has wrong punctuation. So
Yes,
do you want to go over this again, or are you done with this?
Can we do another one that has the misplaced again, like how you determine if it's misplaced? Can we do that one?
Okay, we'll just do all the modifier ones and skip the other ones. How's that?
Right. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so the new employee will take the front office wearing the brown suit. This one, never mind.
No, this one can be used.
Yeah, this one can be used. So is this a dangling modifier or a misplaced modifier?
This is misplaced because we have to put wearing the brown suit with the employee.
Right. So when you have, so the new employee wearing the brown suit will take the front office. So this is a misplaced modifier. Which sentence below is correct? At the age of 4, my dad taught me to ride a bike. When I was 4, my dad taught me to ride a bike. What kind of, is this a dangling modifier or is this a misplaced modifier mistake?
I think it will be a dangling because
It's a dangling modifier mistake. Yeah, because you're missing
the
I.
Yeah.
All right, so here we have, Linda took her daughter to the doctor who has high fever. Linda took her daughter who has a high fever to the doctor. Is this a dangling modifier or is this a misplaced modifier? Mistake.
Misplaced.
Misplaced.
Misplaced, you're getting it. Okay, my uncle just watches one television station. Is this a dangling modifier mistake or misplaced modifier mistake?
So this is also misplaced because we're
Misplaced.
moving the just. Yeah.
All right, walking on the sidewalk, a car raced by.
That one is dangling.
Dangling without understanding it because she remembers walking in the beginning. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're missing, a car cannot grow legs and walk on the sidewalk. That's another way of remembering it. While working, an earthquake shook the building.
That's also dangling.
It's that's
Yeah, because the earthquake is not going to suddenly get a job, okay, and start working. So while I was working, okay, so that's also a dangling modifier. That's it, I think. Here. I will be on the phone making appointments today. Is this a dangling or misplaced modifier?
I think that was misplaced.
Misplaced, yes, because it's supposed to be I will be making appointments on the phone.
Oh, right. Okay.
And then I think that's it. These are the answers to the quiz. And then that was it because we're moving on to the next topic. Everybody done with the quiz? Okay.
Yes,
All right.
ma'am.
So, and then for those of you watching at home, you can stop right here and take a break. Okay, that's what breaks are good for. Walk away or come back tomorrow or the next day because you should just first do the quiz part of this lecture and watch that part first. Get to know your quiz really, really well. Take your quiz, finish your quiz, and then you can go back and watch this part so you know how to do your week 7 forum. So that's how I would do it because I wouldn't watch the whole thing at once because I would get major Zoom fatigue. So anyway, so the second half of this lecture we're going to cover here, we're going to redo the writing process. So the writing process we know as pre-writing, which is we choose an essay topic and we write a thesis statement, writing in which we write a rough draft, and then rewrite, which is what we did, what we're doing this week, which is what we're rewriting our week 6 essay. So that's the final stage. So these are the 3 stages of your writing process. And so here in your week 7 forum, here's what the rest of your class is going to look like. Your week 7, you're going to be pre-writing your second essay. Week 8, you're going to be writing an outline for your essay. Week 11, notice how I skipped week 9 and 10, because week 9 and 10 is going to be something else. So forget about 9 and 10, and then week 11 and 12. So that the writing process for essay 2 is 7, 8, 11, and 12. Okay, and this really confuses students because in 9 and 10 we actually write another paper. And so here is this is the breakdown of what you're going to be doing for the rest of this class for essay 2, the comparison contrast essay. Now, does everyone understand what they're doing for their week 6 assignment, their narrative essay? Yeah? Okay, so you have to you got to double space your paper. You got to have a title page. You got to indent 5 spaces, the first line of every paragraph. Please use Times New Roman. The other fonts are really hard to read. and then here you have 1-inch margins double spaced. Make sure that each paragraph is 5 to 7 sentences. So what is a comparison contrast essay? This will be the last essay of your, of this class. And so comparison contrast essays when you compare two issues, two people, two cultures, two things that are relatively similar, two musicians, two rock musicians. So we make comparisons and contrasts between two things that are relatively similar. You can use either the block method or the alternate method in order to write your essay. And when you can have two different kinds of thesis statements, an explanatory thesis statement or a evaluative thesis statement, which I'll go over in a second. And so this is why I tell students, you need to take a rest after the quiz. Go out and have some fun, and then come back to this lecture in another day, because this lecture actually will take 2 days to finish. Day 1 is the quiz, day 2 is the writing portion. So that's that way you can focus and concentrate. Anyway, here is using the alternate method for your comparison contrast essay. Los Angeles is a better place to live than New York because LA has better beaches, monuments, and food. So the alternate method is just like your 5-paragraph essay structure. And then here you have 5 to 7 sentences about LA has better beaches, LA has better monuments, and LA has better food. And then in this example, I used an evaluative thesis statement because I'm telling you my opinion. An explanatory thesis statement is if I simply said LA and New York are two different places that I am going to compare and contrast. In other words, you don't tell me which you like better. You simply explain to me what they are. Now, when we use an explanatory thesis statement, usually we use that for difficult subjects, controversial subjects. If we have a simple subject like dogs versus cats, please, I do not need an explanatory thesis statement telling me a difference between a dog and a cat, because everybody knows the difference between a dog and a cat. Unless you're 4 years old and you're teaching someone how to read and say, that's a dog and that's a cat. Someone who's never seen them before. So when you have a simple subject like dogs versus cats, adulthood versus childhood, we use an evaluative thesis statement. In an evaluative thesis statement, you tell me which you like better. That's what brings interest to your essay, not the difference between adulthood versus childhood, because everyone has experienced adulthood and a childhood and knows what that is. So you don't need, so that's why explanatory, where you just explain the two things, you use that only for very difficult subjects, like the difference between climate change and global warming. People may not know there's a difference between the two, for instance, or the difference between COVID-19 and long-haul COVID. So if it's a subject people aren't very familiar with, then you can use an explanatory thesis statement and an explanatory comparison contrast essay. So for this comparison contrast essay, if you want to do a hard topic, then feel free to use your explanatory essay thesis statement. But if you're going to choose one of the simpler topics, like, let's see, Charlie Brown versus Shaggy or something like that, then you can use a evaluative. You just tell me which one you like better. Yeah. So here I wrote an explanatory, that's a factual thesis statement where you explain two very difficult things, like the difference between a carbohydrate-free diet and a whole grain diet, okay? Or the difference between a civil war and then how that's got to do with the US Constitution, or the difference between wind turbines and solar panels. And most people don't even know what that is, or the differences. So those are some examples of explanatory when you have a really difficult, but when you have an evaluative, then you can have things like adulthood versus childhood, or New York versus LA, or something like that. Yeah, these are examples of evaluative. Two different kinds of animals, dogs and cats, Coke versus Pepsi. And I know that a lot of people wrote about the Coke marketing versus Pepsi marketing, but most people already know about that. So that's also very common common knowledge. So try not to use an explanatory thesis statement about Coca-Cola marketing versus Pepsi marketing. Okay, I got that a lot. Now I want rather any of these easy topics use evaluative. Fruits versus vegetables. You know, unless you were born on Mars and you don't know what the difference between fruits and vegetables are, I'm more interested in knowing what you like and why. Okay, friends versus family, email versus letters. Being famous. So here are all the different topics that you could choose from for your, so if I were to say communism versus capitalism, would I use an evaluative or explanatory?
That would be more explanatory.
Explanatory, most people don't know
Right.
the difference. Diesel fuel versus petroleum fuel.
Same thing.
Same thing, I
Yeah.
don't know the difference. McDonald's versus Burger King.
That everybody knows.
Yeah,
Everybody
yeah,
knows that, yeah, okay.
exactly. It's
You
evaluative.
get the idea. So
Yes, ma'am.
so basically these are all the different boys versus girls.
You don't have to explain that one.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, summer versus. So anyway, you have plenty of to choose from. Sam versus Frodo. That was actually someone did that. Was very interesting. Apple versus. Anyway, so here are the different, and also in your book they call alternate method. It's the same thing as point by point method. It's the same thing as side by side method. Which is the same thing as 5-point essay structure. Okay, so if you Google it, that's what all of this is the same. And block method is the same thing as one side at a time, and subject by subject, and also side by side. All of these mean block method. Okay, it's all the same thing. And the thing about block method is it will have 4 paragraphs instead of 5. Okay, you'll have your introduction, then you write 1 paragraph about New York, 1 paragraph about Los Angeles, but then you have to write it in order, and you've got to keep it to 5 to 7 sentences. So if you can be concise, then you can use block method. But if you tend to be a person that goes yak, 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 then I suggest you use the alternate method. When you look at the week 7 interactive, interactive lecture, they're going to have here the alternate method has 250 words, while the block method has 100 words. That means you have to be concise. Okay, so here you have to be able to talk about beaches, Mexican food, and culture, all about New York beaches, New York Mexican food, New York culture in 7 sentences, tops. And then you have to be able to mention, and you got to do it in this order too: beaches, Mexican food, culture. And then when you write the one on California, same order: beaches, Mexican food, culture. Has to be in 5 to 7 sentences. So if you know how to write short and concise, you can use the one side at a time method. And if not, then you can use the point by point method. This is the example given to you in your book. Home cooked hamburgers are better than fast food hamburgers because of the taste, the nutrition, and the price. And so this is a point by point, and this is and the block method would be taste, nutrition, price. Home cooked hamburgers, fast food burgers would be taste, nutrition, and price. And then in your paragraph 4, you state which one is better. Although I prefer you do it in both your introduction and in your paragraph 4, in which you state which one is better. And that's about it. And then in my next instructor session, I will be going over more about, or next few instructor sessions, I will go over transition words, parallel structure, pie structure. I believe your next one is going to be about business communication. So I'll be talking about how can we apply the 5-paragraph essay structure to business communication. So I believe that's week 7. And in week 8, I'll come back to how to write a comparison contrast essay and how to use transition words. I believe that's what it is in week 7 and 8. And mainly I'm going to cover APA formatting again, because people still don't know how to do it for their week 10 assignment. Even though I cover it in week 3, week 5, week 7, I try to repeat myself several times. And when we get to the week 10, people still go, huh? What's a direct quote? And stuff like that. So I repeat myself. That's part of teaching. You got to repeat yourself. Do you have any questions on this end? And so in the week 7 forum, you're just going to write an outline of that's the next forum after week 5. you're gonna choose a topic, and then you're gonna write your 3 reasons. In other words, I like Coca-Cola better than Pepsi because of its taste, its price, and its whatever the 3rd reason is, or something like that. So that's gonna be week 7 forum. So that's gonna be you'll be starting the next essay. So that's about it for this this lecture. So let's see. So do you have any questions?
As far as picking a topic is concerned, does it have to be from that list?
It doesn't have to be from that list, no.
Okay.
It can be about something that you did, like military life versus civilian life. I had a student write that. Malaysia versus China, or Malaysian food versus American food. I don't know, whatever. It could come out of your experience also. So yeah.
Mhm.
So as long as you follow the structure and use the right thesis statement. Jamila, do you have any questions?
No, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, then we can end this week's lecture, and next week's lecture is going to be about business communication. So if you're interested in learning how to write a good business business proposal, and how to write a good email and have good messaging, I will be covering that next week. So I guess I will just end it for this week. So I hope to see good grades on everyone's week 7 quiz. All right?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. Bye. All right.